starting. So, all right. So my name is Andre Cohen, and one of, I'm doing a piece on Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, and I'm in my office at my school. So you may see students come in and out of my office to get the things that they need for their classes. So don't be distracted by that. And so the essential question that I'm asking folks to weigh in on is this question of all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter. And so what are leaders doing to kind of have conversations about both of those uh, conversations, and then why is that conversation important to happen, important to have to talk about Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, and what is the relationship between those concepts? And so today I have Kevin with me, and Kevin, can you talk a little bit about your organization and the role that you play in your organization?
Yeah, certainly. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Kevin Gordon. We have a company called Camp Kupugani, which is a multicultural summer camp for girls. We have both girls-only and boys-only sessions for ages 7 to 15, as well as mother-daughter weekend and parent-child weekend. And the point of our camp is we're intentionally diverse, we're intentionally challenging, we're intentionally empowering, and intentionally fun. But the whole point is to bring together people of different backgrounds and have them celebrate and appreciate themselves for however they want to define or not define themselves, and also do the same for others. And so part of that is, giving them the tools to do that, but that's the kind of concept behind our camp.
All right, great. So, and if I'm not mistaken, um, your particular camp is throughout the United States has a particular um, standing in terms of its ownership and who it's run by. And if I'm not mistaken, it's run by and primarily owned by African American or multicultural folk, where that's not necessarily true throughout the rest of the camps in the United States. Is that a good way to encapsulate that?
Yeah, it's kind of sad but true. As far as we've seen since, well, prior to our founding, and then we're now entering our ninth summer. We have yet to find another camp that's owned, another private residential camp that's owned by black folks.
Wow, wow. That's an area that is just very interesting because we see lots of folks going to the Y camps, going to all these other camps, and not to say that they're not excellent, which I believe that they are, and I find it interesting that even in this day that there aren't more camps owned by black folks, which says something too, but that's another conversation.
Mm.
So, why do you think that we're in a place where we're having these conversations about Black lives mattering or Black lives being important? Haven't Black lives always been important or a value? But why do you think now is the time that we're having these conversations?
That's a good question. I'm not sure it's even necessarily a wholly positive thing. Not to have the conversations, but that those conversations have been happening. I grew up in Canada, of Jamaican parents, and in Canada but it's by no means perfect. There's racism, discrimination, etc. But at least there seems to be an understanding that you can be of whatever background,
Yeah.
Jamaican, Asian, Latino, whatever, and you can also be a Canadian at the same time, and both are equal. But it seems like my experiences in the U.S. for, I don't know, about the last 30 years has been a kind of a continual moving away from unity to like a fracturing divisiveness.
Mhm.
And so um, definitely down with celebrating Black lives as I am with celebrating any lives, but it seems like we're doing things at the expense of bringing people together. Um, and it's tricky because with the history of the U.S., you have to, be brown and black and proud, and there's a lot of reasons why it's happening, but it seems like over the last 20, 30 years, there's there's been a fracturing of things. So I don't know. It's a challenge to bring everyone together while at the same time celebrating uniqueness of whatever whatever affinity group you're a part of as well.
Yeah. So how do you, at your camp, how do you bring together that idea of being multicultural while still holding on? Because I would assume that your children are multicultural, but also would be seen as being black. And so, how do you hold this multiculturalism while identifying, you know, with a blackness, or is that even something that we need to be considering? And I know I'm asking a bunch of different questions at the same time,
Mhm.
but I guess at the core of my question is, can you hold up multiculturalism and speak to a particular group's needs? In particular, this case, looking at Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter. How do you bridge that in your curriculum at your camp?
Mm. Yeah, I think when I think if you're striving towards like overall cultural competence, which I guess would be more all lives matter. So when we're striving for something that like okay, everyone's important. You can celebrate and appreciate your own identity and do the same for others. And in that environment, then all lives, then it's not just Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, Jewish Lives Matter, whatever it is. So kind of what it comes down to in our curriculum in our community, our Kupagani community, is that we are, if you're a whoever you are as a child or a young adult, you get to be that. So whether if it's me and I have brown skin, sure, I can be a brown person, or I'm wearing a whatever a red sweatshirt, or I can be a red sweatshirt person, and it's not up to other people to categorize me. I can be a hockey player, I can be whatever, and when you have an inclusive community that's respecting you for whatever choices you want to make, then then you have the freedom to be that. So there are times when I am defining myself as black, um, and that matters. And then other people receiving that message from me respect that. If I don't want to be black, for example, it's like, hey, I'm just a hockey player. It's like, okay, that's Kevin, a hockey player. Um, and so the more that we kind of respect what people are bringing from within, then that's when you're truly finding that all lives matter, black lives, and every life within that.
Okay. So in your yeah, because I'm trying to get to kind of a balance, because obviously, um, when we're old enough, for example, you and I, we have enough experience, we have enough history to really be able to say that I am all of these things, simultaneously, or select which things we want to be the dominant thing that we show the world. What's important to give children so that they have that ability to um, be able to express themselves and say, I'm multifaceted individual, or to be able to say, this is who I am. What should we be giving children so that they can make those, look at themselves at a macro level and at a micro level?
Hmm. I think we need to give the more that we can give children. It seems like kind of a dual faceted approach. So one kind of internally, like if we can help them not give them, help them achieve the confidence in themselves, to whether it's a particular identity or no identity whatsoever, like whatever they want to define or not define themselves, to the confidence to be that. And that's something also that can evolve, because when you're whatever 5 or 10, you probably should be different than when you're 15 or 20, and then 25, 35, or 46 and a half like me. That if we can give them confidence just to be and inhabit themselves and gain the confidence with that, then they'll engender that respect from others to respect whatever choices or identities they want to inhabit. Um, and then the second piece is making sure they're doing that for others. or giving them the experience and perspective that whatever choices they're making from themselves, there are other people that are making different choices, um, and as long as they don't necessarily have to think the same as them, but as long as they can appreciate that others can have a different perspective, then that gives them the, I don't know, the greater kind of worldliness or knowledge to like I said before, so that we can strive towards that cultural competence where everyone is accepted for themselves.
So, can you give me just an activity? And I don't want you don't have to give away the magic of your curriculum or anything like that. But can you give us an example of how you have this multicultural dialogue that demonstrates that all lives matter in your camp? Is there a particular activity or sets of activities that you do that help to drive home that point to the young ladies that you work with?
Yeah, well, we have different pieces that we work with in, like we have sort of team building and identity building curriculum that they work in throughout the course of a 2-week session. But kind of one activity that kind of in a nutshell kind of sums it up for me is that in our handbook we ask each child to bring a cultural, uh, either a cultural artifact or something that means something to them. And then at some point we have, it's relatively early on in the session, maybe the second or third evening, we have a time where they bring it to dinner, and then after they have a big circle and they get to show off whatever it is and what it means to them. And just by seeing the variety of things, so some people bring flags of their native country or that represents their background. Some people might bring, so we'll have, what sticks in my mind, like we had a Spanish girl, she brought a Spanish flag, spoke, and that to me is kind of not an obvious thing, but something that people more readily accept as culture, quote unquote. But then, for example, we had a Caucasian girl who maybe she was Irish, and she had a 4-leaf clover or something, and just like how she explained how her how her identity, how she adopted this as an identity, and like the more that people can, whereas I guess say for this particular example, it's people are more readily accept the Spanish thing as a culture than what they might perceive as a white girl with a 4-leaf clover,
Right.
and when you open up to a dialogue and say the importance of it, and like, yeah, well, of course, this Irish, this girl of Irish American descent should of course be able to define herself however she wants. We had like one child, she was a Chicago Bears fan, and like, of course, she should be able to identify with that. Like, it's not up to us to put ourselves on it. And then the more, as we go around the circle, and some people show some things that are, more maybe are deeper than others, or some that seem a little bit more surface based, you really see kind of the rich diversity that if we, even as adults, sometimes just get out of the way and can create environments where they can celebrate and appreciate this richness, the potential is huge.
So ultimately, I mean, what do you know, what's your ultimate hope by engaging in this multicultural dialogue and having, you know, uh, white people's culture valued as much as Spanish culture, as much as an Ethiopian culture or an African American culture or a Black American culture? What are your aims and your hopes through the summer program?
To change the world, of course. um, but like to me, I mean, you say it kind of off the cuff to change the world, but really, I feel like if one person is thinking differently in one instance, whether they might, an instance where they might have said something or done something that is not progressive in that way, then you really have changed the world. Because if you're sending off these, it's kind of that ripple effect of people. So whether it's a small, whether it's one affecting one person in a small way or a seemingly small way, or amongst all these people, there's a person that's gonna make a bigger or a more obviously bigger impact. I think the more that we can expose or have children experience different perspectives in a real way early, the less 20 years later that you're encountering people that have to say like, oh, I have a whatever, insert blank here, so and so friend who says. So instead of having to claim and artificially claim these different perspectives, you will have lived them. Like you know that this person is the same as you in many ways because you lived with them. Or they're different from you in certain ways because you lived with them, not because they're a person of a certain affinity group, just because you recognize from having had experience with a number of different people that people share similarities and people share differences.
Mhm. Well, cool, cool, cool. Is there a website that we should send folks to? Is there what's the timeline for signing up a young lady for the camp? If you can give us those logistics, that would be super.
Yeah, sure. Well, kupugani.com, which can be hard to spell, but it's KUPUGANI.com. But it's easier for those of you who can type more. It's multiculturalsummercamp.com. Also goes to our camp. We do rolling admissions as long as there's space available. Generally, the closer to summer, the less space is available. The farther away from summer, the better. And like I said, we have our 2 and 4 week program for girls only, 2-week program for boys only, then a mother-daughter and a parent-child weekend also.
Okay. Well, great. Thank you. Is there anything else that we should be thinking about in terms of uh, Black Lives Matter or All Lives Matter that you like to leave us with?
Um, yeah, it's tough to think on the spot for something great, but I think like the more that we can inhabit that space that all lives matter, then the more Black lives matter within that as well. Everybody matters.
Very true, very true. Thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you being able to join us. And when I get this thing all edited and cut, I'll share it with you.
Cool. Yeah, definitely appreciate it. Yeah, keep doing the good work and enjoy the kids at school and enjoy life in general.
All right. Thank you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, take care.